Well, hello everyone. It's me, Deplorable McAllister, aka Linda Paris, and I'm here with one of my favorite super soldiers of all time. You guys know it because I play his videos all the time, and I get to ask him questions today, and I'm so excited. And his name is Daryl James, and he was in the military. And Daryl, welcome, welcome, and thank you so much for coming here and answering my questions. And can you tell us a little bit about your experience, whatever you want to tell?
Well, I joined in '99 and I was in Naval Mobile Construction Battalion 7. I went to Iraq. I got there like probably, I got there a day before the war started. I was in Kuwait and we went off into Iraq the next day. And after that, I went to, it was called JMF, Joint Maritime Force, which stood for the Navy, and RAF, Royal Air Force, St. Maughan. And that was in Newquay, England, in Cornwall, about an hour from Plymouth. And yeah, well, I mean, the first class petty officer picked me up from the bus station, and he said, "This is a weird base." That was pretty much how he started out. And then I had, it was probably, well, when I first got there, signed all these non-disclosure papers and all this other stuff. And first Monday I was there, it was probably the second day I was there. They had me do a escort seamen civilian workers from the corporation Siemens into the underground base, and I worked in the garage, so I didn't work in the underground base. And there was a metal detector, and the first Siemens worker said, "I'm not going through that bloody thing." So I thought, well, I don't want to go through it either. So they walked around it, and it just looked like an airport metal detector. It's kind of like,
This was the second day you were there.
probably the second day, yeah. And they already had me doing a watch, and I only had a secret clearance, and this was a top secret base, if not higher than top.
I wanted to ask you something because you said Corporation Siemens, the corporation, the big corporation where there's buildings. I grew up in Washington, D.C., and there's Siemens factories, buildings, whatever you want to call them, all around the outside of D.C. I've seen this my whole life, but I know other areas that are like that. So now you're in Iraq. Or no, now you're in the UK.
Now I'm in the UK. Yeah, yeah. I went to this new command. Yeah, and so yeah, the guy said I'm not going through it, so I went to walk around it, and there was an Englishman with he was in the army, and he had, I think, a green beret, and he was standing behind the stainless steel table, and he was in uniform, and he had a rifle over his shoulder, and he said, "No, you walk through." So I looked at it, and I thought, well, maybe, it's just a metal detector, so I walked through it. I would had to be escorted myself through the underground base because I didn't even have a high enough clearance. So somebody else escorted me, and there was white, blue, and red lines on the floor, painted on the floor, and it was white was secret, blue was top secret, and red was a higher clearance that I'm not really sure of. And
But
there were certain hallways.
you didn't know that. You didn't know that at the
I didn't
time.
even know what the clearance was called. Yeah, it was
But
red.
did you notice when you first went in that those lines were there and wonder about them?
Oh, immediately, yeah, because it looked like spaghetti, because some of them went some places and some went others. There was, different hallways and different doorways. And then white just went down mainly main halls, and then blue went down some. And then there were other hallways that were just completely dark with no light, and that was only red. So that was just a red, and the red went everywhere, no matter what. But yeah, it looked like spaghetti. There was just lines going everywhere in different hallways and different doorways on the floor.
But at a certain point, all the other colors went away, and only the red could go
And
down.
only red, yeah. In certain areas, it was just red.
And this is at Siemens.
No, this was in St. Maughan. It was called RAF. It was JMF RAF St. Maughan at the time. It's just RAF now.
Were you sent there by the Siemens Corporation or referred there by the Siemens? Is this connected to the Siemens Corporation?
It was just connected that they were just civilian workers to work on a pump. There was an underground pump that was broken down, and they were just sent in there to work on this pump. That's all it was. Yeah. So I just sat down and I watched them work, and then that was it, and it was the end. And then I had well, I was playing Halo with the guys, the video game Halo in the barracks, and one of them said something like, "Did you see that reptile today?" And I'm thinking, there must be, reptiles in the underground base, like monitor lizards or four-legged lizards. I was waiting for the next game, and he said, yeah, it was big. So I'm thinking in my head it's big, and then another guy said, yeah, it talked funny too, and I just said, what? Like it talked to you? And they said, oh yeah, you're new here. They said, yeah, there's reptiles that live underground, and they're big and they talk. And I said, there's a four-legged lizards. I still think they're walking around all fours. I never heard of this. And they said, no, they walk upright like us on 2 feet. They're humanoid. And then they started going in about, there's elongated skulls that live under there too. And they were saying like they were cannibals, kind of, sort of, because they eat people, but like they're still related to us enough to where it would be considered like cannibalism. And they're really fascinated with classical art and classical music and things like that. And I think they were saying things like their average IQ is like 160, but it can go up to like even higher, over 200. But I think somebody said because of their brain capacity, these elongated skulls have very high IQs.
So you've got a whole bunch of people telling you this at once.
Yeah. There was just a room full of guys. It was probably,
and they were all telling you. Did you for 1 second think maybe they're pulling my leg or something about all this shit?
Yeah, I was the new guy, so I thought, yeah. And that's kind of how I blew it off in my head. I thought, well, they're just messing with me. I'm the new guy. So
let me ask you this: do you think they were talking about this stuff all along, but you just weren't paying attention to it? And this particular night, it caught your ear?
Well, I don't know about that because it was still the first week I was there.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And I think they were like trying to like acclimatize me almost to get me ready for this. They were kind of putting little seeds in my head and the back of my head to get me ready to see this stuff. I think the command almost was trying to tell them like, let them know things here and there.
Yeah. I just want to get everybody up to speed because we had a conversation before this. This base, you described it as a weird base, Nuki. And this is over in, you said, what's the face,
Cornwall.
Cornwall. And Cornwall, that's where all the rich go to vacation over there in Europe. And they're always talking about it. It's been a real lush spot like Cannes or something in France for centuries. It's old. And so this base is located in this really occulty kind of area for the rich and famous lizards of the world here. And you had all of these experiences in this Nuki base.
Yes.
And were they talking in English accents and stuff?
Oh yeah, I mean they call it a Cornish accent. It's real thick, and if you get like local farmers and stuff, it's difficult to understand them. They speak a very thick Cornish accent. Yeah.
So I was going to ask you that. Did you think maybe they might be just dropping you little clues so that when you actually saw that this was real?
Mm-hmm.
Because go ahead, I'll just let you finish.
Yeah, well, and so they were talking, telling me things like that, and so then they call it like balls to four in the military, which is 12 a.m. So 0-100 to 4 a.m. And I saw Michael Aquino at the quarterdeck. I went to the quarterdeck to check in for watch. I had Rover Watch, which is a guy that walks around the base and makes sure nothing's happening and everything like that. And I saw his, he has the turned up eyebrows, and I saw him on Oprah when I was a kid, so I recognized him right away. And he was pretty old, he was gray. He was an older man. And he was looking through papers at the quarterdeck. And I almost kind of think maybe he was looking through like my scores or my papers when I look back on it. And maybe he was just trying to, I don't know, size me up. But I said, hello, sir. And he said, oh, how you doing? He had like kind of a high pitched, like a feminine voice. And then I sat down and I don't know, he was asking me, where am I from? And do I like England or, things like that.
So he was conversational with you.
Yeah, he was just talking to me. Yeah, and it was, he kind of creeped me out, so I was just like, I'm going to go for another round, sir, and I left. And that was when I met Aquino, and he's a colonel.
I was going to ask, was he considered in high regard there, where you were at that base?
I don't know. It was kind of strange to see a very high-ranking officer like that at the quarterdeck at midnight, because that's a watch that nobody wants. It's midnight to 4 in the morning, and nobody wants to be. And it was strange for he was in this full dress uniform, army uniform, and yeah, I mean, later on, I asked the executive officer of the base when he was telling me about all this stuff. I asked him about Aquino, and he said, "Oh, he's all right." He just kind of said like that, and he said, "Where did you see Aquino at?" He was surprised I saw him, and I said I saw him on Oprah when I was a kid. But yeah, and so that was that Friday, and then next Friday I had another Balls Before watch, which really isn't common.
So you've
And
been at this place 2 weeks, maybe.
yeah, so 2 weeks I've been there probably by now. And I was just sitting down, and there was this heavy set, like first class. He was blonde, probably, I don't know, mid-30s. He had a blonde mustache. And he said, "What do you think about that?" And he pointed at the computer monitor that he was in front of. And it was just like a picture. It was a black and white picture, and it looked like a gray, like your stereotypical gray.
And at this point in time, you're in another building, right?
Well, like the quarterdeck was right before you entered the underground base. There was like a doorway at the quarterdeck, like a sliding glass door where you could go into the underground base.
But
yeah,
it's
the quarterdeck is. Huh?
not anybody can just walk in and out of this building that you're in.
Oh no, no. I mean, there's armed guards at the front gate. Like we were in the middle of the base. We weren't by like the front gate or anything like that. We were
okay.
like, in the center of the base. Yeah, the quarterdeck is kind of like the lobby, of a military base. It's where you check in when you first go to the command. If you're going to go on vacation, on leave, you check out there and you check back in. It's like it's like almost like the lobby, like a hotel of the base.
So you were not near that. You were somewhere beyond that.
No, I was at the quarterdeck. This was above ground. This was like this wasn't even in the underground base. This is above ground. It's like an office. It looked like an office building.
It seems like a building they would hide.
No, that's the thing. Yeah. Well, I mean, Nuki is kind of, you're out in the middle of like sheep country and tin mining. It's like wool and tin. So you're out in the middle of the country. Yeah, you're out in the middle.
It'd be like Area 51 or something like that, where you were out in the middle of the desert or someplace where the people weren't coming and going everywhere all the time.
Exactly. It's mostly farmers out there. Yeah, it's mostly farms. Like
I'm just trying to get a picture of it in my mind where you exactly are in this. And you're like been there for like a couple weeks already. And all this stuff is happening to you. So go ahead.
Yeah. And yeah, so I had that other midnight to 4 watch. And he said, "Yeah, what do you think about that?" And he pointed at the screen monitor. And all I said was, "Did you get that off the internet?" Because it just looked like a picture. And next to the sliding glass door, there was a window. It was probably about 4 inches from the ceiling and about 4 inches from the floor. It was a big window, glass window. And there was like a separate room behind it with a desk and chairs. And he said, "Look," and he pointed at the window. And there was just like this gray standing there behind this glass. And he was like a light brown, like a khaki brown, but he had almost like a hue of pink to it. It had a fold of skin that went from like where the tear ducts would be, like down to the cheekbones, big black eyes, had really long fingers, like knobby knuckles. It looked like it could pick something up without bending its knees or back. And it was like, it had to hold its hands in like C shapes when it walked or would it drug its fingers. And he said, "Do you mind if it comes in here?" And I said, "Does it mind if I stare at it?" Because I didn't know if it was like an animal or what. I really didn't understand it. If it would attack me, if I looked at it too long, if it was like a dog, I don't know. But he said he didn't mind. And then it walked through, and that same guard was behind it with his like weapon on his shoulder still, that same one I saw before. And it had a little silver pistol in its hand, it looked like. And I just got back from Iraq, so I said, "Gun." And then like nobody did anything, and it was walking really erratic and machine-like at me, very fast. And I stood straight up and I yelled, "Gun," and I pointed right at it. And then they all said it's not a gun, and it held it out in front of me, like in its palm, and it showed it to me. It looked like a brushed metal pistol. So then I'm thinking maybe it's like one of those syringes in Star Trek or something. I'm trying to like figure this out, all these different scenarios, because I know what it is. I've seen this on the cover of a book before. And I know what this is, but I've never seen it. So,
well, you just added something to the story that I hadn't gotten before from one of your last tellings of it. Is the thing was moving towards you fast.
Yeah, it was
It
fast,
wasn't
very.
just walking, strolling towards you with this thing. No, it was coming towards you
It was
fast.
just like that. It was just coming at you,
Yeah.
yeah, and it was really quick, and it was machine like, and it just stopped. When it stopped, it didn't rock or anything. It just stopped like a statue, and
So
it
you
wasn't
don't know
breathing. Its
what
eyes
the
weren't
hell.
blinking.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Look, I'm not laughing. I'm just laughing because I would be the same exact way. I'd be like, what the fuck? I would go back on it.
yeah.
And you just said you came back from Iraq. So yeah, I would imagine you just totally freaked out. And the guy is there with the rifle. He's pointing it at you.
Well, he still had it on his shoulder at this time, and then in the first class he said, "Sit down, calm down." So I sat down, and then it just walked up to this like old government issued Dell computer, like something you'd see at the DMV or something, and it was actually a drill in its hand, and it took it apart like as fast as you can move, pretty much. It didn't have to guide the bit in or anything. It just like that, and it was catching the screws in the other hand, and I caught every screw. Went to the back, did it. Went to the side, did it. It was one of the kind you had to slide off the top. You slide straight up, slid it straight up the lid or the cover. I mean, popped out 2 gigs of RAM. It had to, and then there were two other ones waiting for it, and it had to, reach up on the table because it was short. It was probably only about 2.5, maybe 3 feet. Probably
Oh,
about 2.5 feet.
really?
Yeah, it was a
Oh,
little short
okay.
thing.
I didn't get that out of the first one either. I thought it was larger, like about 4 feet or maybe even 5 feet
It was,
tall.
yeah, it was 3 feet tops. It was a little thing. Yeah,
Oh, really? It was real little like that. Okay. So
yeah,
now
it was
I
five.
see why you said it was almost like looking at a spider or something. It was smaller.
Yeah, and it had just really long fingers. It was probably its palms are about twice as long as mine, and then its fingers are probably about twice. So if it, like I said, it had to keep him like this, or would drag him on the ground. It was like his hands were like that,
Wow.
and yeah, and the big black eyes and everything else, and it just there was just nothing there. It didn't seem like there was anything in there. It just seemed like this
Like,
automaton, like this
like
machine.
Siri or your car.
Yeah, it was yeah, like looking at a refrigerator or something. Yeah, it was just like there was nothing there, like in its eyes. It didn't blink, they didn't move. There was this black eye, and yeah, it took out the 2 gigs around, put them on the table, grabbed two more, slapped them in like in one motion. It still had the screws in its palm, and it was able to kind of flick it forward into its fingers, like every screw perfectly. I don't know if it was lifting it up or what, and it put it together, back together almost as quickly as it took it apart. And then it just stood there for a moment and let me look at it. And I kind of leaned to one side and it turned its head for me so I could see it. And it did the same thing. And then I looked at its hands and it's moved its hands back and forth. And then I got almost kind of bored with it and it walked away. And I remember I tried to lean forward and touch it. And he said, "Don't touch it." The first class petty officer said, "Don't touch it." And I was like pinching myself the whole time
Yeah.
as it was walking away. And he said, "Do you think you're dreaming?" The first class petty officer. And I said, "No, I want to have a mark or something. So if in case you wipe my mind, I'll have a mark and maybe I'll remember this." Because I'm thinking they're going to wipe my
Yeah.
mind after seeing something like this. And I
Yeah.
had a blood blister the next day. Yeah. Like I had a mark on my leg just to make sure that I remembered this. And he starts going through his computer and he starts saying things like, he said, "You're smart." And I said, "Really?" And he goes, "Yeah." I said, "How smart?" "Like 140, 150 IQ. And he said, "More like 190 and 195.
Wow.
And then he said, scores like that, you'll make officer." And I thought, like, officer of what? And he really wasn't like going into it that much. And then
Well,
he asked me if
also, after you just seen that thing, you're like, officer, what?
yeah, yeah, exactly. I was nauseous. My legs were shaking. I had like a really bad adrenaline dump. And it was this,
Yeah.
I was really like, yeah, I was on the verge of throwing up. I felt like I was kind of breathing heavy. My legs, I even stood up and I was pacing around after it went away because I do that when I get upset. I was pacing around.
Let's be clear about this. This did not look like a toy or anything. There wasn't anything really that fake looking about it. Like it looked organic. It had skin and so there's a disconnect there when you see the way it's acting and then you see that it's got like organic tissue and stuff.
And
It was like
the skin looked kind of almost plastic though. when you looked at it, like it had no nipples, no navel, no genitals, and it was just like kind of shiny, and it really didn't wrinkle like in the pits and things like that. It didn't wrinkle like skin does. It was almost kind of like a weird, but it looked fleshy, but at the same time it was shiny and looked almost plastic like at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But your initial reaction was like it almost was a living thing, or it wasn't a toy. It wasn't a toy. It wasn't a machine. It wasn't anything like
No.
anything you'd
Yeah.
ever seen before. There was a pseudo-human quality about it, I guess. And that's what was so disturbing about it, that it had a lifelike quality to it. But then again, you'd never seen anything like it. And I was thinking that the height of it would be less intimidating than if it was maybe 5 feet tall or something.
Well, it was just like you saw a 3 foot tall spider. It was very insect-like. So it gave you that willies, like when you see a really big bug. It gave you like that feeling of when you see a big insect, and it was just you just wanted it to stay away from you. Is basically all it was.
Yeah. So you were talking about your IQ and how they were talking to you about that. And one thing I wanted to add was that from what I've understood from reading these Val Valerian papers and a lot of other stuff is they have those big heads because they store a lot of information and capabilities and stuff, and they need the heads to be that big. So it sounds like all that stuff it was doing, it couldn't have done without everything going on. They need those big heads to make those calculations. It's like a computer.
But yeah, they can be programmed to do different tasks too. Yeah. So they can work on different ships, but they can also perform surgeries. Like I remember there was a girl, and I asked Robert about this, and a woman I knew, and she had a tooth implant. And I remember we were in Plymouth, and we were just with a group of friends at a restaurant, and she commented about her tooth. And Robert, the executive officer of the base, he told me that she was part of this program, this woman. And I said, well, when they put you in these med beds and things like that, everything grows back. So I said, they must have taken that tooth out and then must have put it back in. And I said, well, then they put her, her implant, her tooth back in, the titanium screw and then the tooth on top of it. And he said, yeah. And I said, well, how do they do that? He said, the drones. He said they could do it perfectly, exactly how it was before we even joined the program. And when you get age regress, it's not only like an age regress, and everything comes back. Your scars, if you're missing a tooth, all that stuff, everything they fixed when you were in the program, it all goes back to the way it was when they age regress you. So they just use those drones to screw it back, screw the titanium screw right back into her jaw and put the tooth back on exactly the way it was.
Wow. So you just said something that piqued my interest, and it was you seem to have more because I was thinking about this last night. You've had a lot of encounters, but they're only the ones you remember. You probably had more encounters than what you remember, I'm thinking. And then also now I was wondering if you'd had any more memories, I guess is what I'm asking, of encounters. It sounds like you have, because you were talking about how they were good on ships and stuff like that. So that must be from your memory, or to have
of the drones? Of the little drones. I remember, the drones were like, when I was in the Dark Fleet, which the military calls them off-world Germans. And there's like an off-world German breakaway society, and they're kind of like mercenaries for the reptiles. They're like a vassal state. And I remember you'd push them out of the way. They'd be walking around the ship and they would just be doing like preventive maintenance kind of things on the ship. They were like the workers on the ship that would fix things. And I remember one time I pushed one out of the way, and I guess it was doing something important. And it actually like looked at me and it screamed. It set out like this weird scream, and I just kind of backed off. And it just kept on doing whatever it was doing. But it was very common, just to push them out of the way because they're everywhere and they just get in your way.
It screamed at you. Oh, my God. I probably would have screamed back. Did you scream?
Like a high-pitched scream, yeah.
That's what I would have done. I would have screamed right back at it. Mm-hmm. Well, I guess there's a lot of varieties of these things, because they're like robots and they just throw everything that they in the kitchen sink that's available to them into the mix and try to see what like that Max thing you were talking about, the spider with the face.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, that is more like and those little grays. I remember Robert called them drones. They call them drones. They're like they
Yeah,
work
I've
as
heard
like
that
drones.
before.
Yeah, and yeah, Max. Yeah, well, after I was back into the program, I saw something in the caverns. There's caverns underground, the underground base. There's caves and stuff that, I think probably reptiles and grays, different ETs have carved these caverns out under deeper than the underground bases. And yeah, there was like in this cage, like it had this, the bars were kind of embedded in the earth and the stone, and it was almost like a big zoo cage with these big bars. And there was just this spider that was had the torso of a man, but it had the bottom half of a spider, like a chimera, and it had two black eyes in the front, and then it had eyes right here, and then it kind of went up its head, and it got
Whoa.
smaller as it went up, and it had like a black tuft of hair on top, but then at the elbows, it went from like a man's shoulders, and then at the elbows, it became like spider arms, and it became like black, wiry hair. And it had like those two spider prongs for its hands. And it
Whoa.
had like fangs coming down for a mouth. And yeah, they called it Max. And I remember I asked Robert, like, why did they do that? He said that the reptiles make those. And he told me it was like building chips in a bottle to them to manipulate human DNA with like different species of arachnid, insect, and other kinds of animals.
Oh, that was the Germans doing that.
No, that was the reptiles.
Oh,
The
that was the
reptiles.
reptiles. So you were talking about the off-world Nazis, and I got, when you were talking about that thing, screaming, I got a little sidetracked because I didn't know they did that. And
Yeah, they manipulate, and yeah, and it's just a way to occupy their time. It's like building models to them, I guess.
but then I started thinking how they're making all these different robots and creatures and things. So they're really all different. You can't say one gray drone is quiet. I guess they have personality traits too, I would guess. But these off-world Nazis, I wanted to ask you some questions about them. Are they all clones? I had heard that they were all made from the DNA of the SS, the original SS, the Kruger.
Yeah.
That
Well, I
they have
mean,
a whole team there that came from the DNA of the original SS, and they're all the officers and stuff.
it could be. I mean, I'm sure they mostly just took their SS and things like that. But I mean, they have children like us and things like that. And the reptiles, I mean, they have, they'll have one wife or one husband, and they'll have children. And the reptiles will they use your family against you in the sense that if you disobey orders, they'll take it out on your family. I remember that. Like Robert told me a lot about that. He wasn't a German or anything like that, but he was just in this program, and I asked him why he did the things he did and things like that, and he said they'll hurt my daughter. So it's
Well,
like the
did you
reptiles.
go to dinner at his house with his wife or something, and they were bashing the reptilians?
No, that was I actually went on the German world, and it was the first officer. He was the second in command of the Germans, and he was actually the S3 on my base, which is third in command. So he was a legal officer, but he was a lieutenant. And then Robert told me this, that he told me everybody on base that was an off-world German, like our doctor, like the doctor on the base on Earth in Newquay, England, he was an off-world German. The S3 was an off-world German. The master chief of the base, who was second or third in command, he was an off-world German. And yeah, there were two other ones, this blonde man and this he was a first-class petty officer, and a senior chief with glasses and a mustache. But yeah, you had these off-world Germans. They were almost like spies working on the base and things like that. But yeah, like I was on the German world, and I was with the S on Earth, but he was the second officer on the ship I was on. And yeah, him and his wife just started talking about the reptiles, and she said how much she hated them and she thought they were disgusting. And I kind of looked around, and I thought almost it was like a test to see if I was like loyal or not. And he said it's all right. He said we don't like them either. And so yeah, the Germans don't like the reptiles either. At least the royal cast, the draconian kind.
It's funny because I just heard recently that the Greys don't like the reptilians. They hate them.
Yeah,
They
yeah. They hate themselves, I'm sure. I mean,
yeah.
just awful things. I mean,
Well, they're almost possessed or something, they're so evil, it's like I don't know, they seem easily taken down the dark path. These reptilian things seem to gravitate towards everything dark and horrible. I do know that there is good reptilians. So I've
Yeah,
heard
there are. Yeah, the bigger
that.
ones, the bigger guys, they're usually decent. It's the little ones, the little like ones that look like Skeksis almost from that movie Dark Crystal. They have like the robes that drag behind them, and they're
Oh,
hunchback.
yeah. That
Yeah, they
because
look
you had said you saw Michael Aquino outside of his hologram. And he
whatever you want to call it. Yeah,
did he have robes on, did you say? With this snake?
yeah. He looked. David Icke did a sketch, and it looked kind of like that. It was a black and white like pencil sketch
I've
that David
seen
Icke
that.
did.
I was looking for it like crazy this morning. I kept going, snakehead coming out of robes. I've seen that. And that's what I
Hmm.
was going to say to you. I've seen a sketch, which is exactly what you described to me. And so David Icke did that sketch.
Yeah, but he was fourth density, so he kind of shifted. Fourth density is like astral plane, spirit world, and that's kind of like where reptiles live. So you can, if you think about an individual reptile too long, you can actually conjure them. They're on like that level where they could be in your room and you wouldn't even know it, kind of thing. But yeah, so he kind of shifted from like having fangs and maybe eyes on the side of his head, and to more looking like a non-venomous snake, where he just looked like a black racer with a snout coming out. And yeah, he had like a red robe, red cloak, and a red robe on. And I think maybe on the hem of the cloak there were like hieroglyphics or something like that of his robe. And yeah, one of the guys on base, I think the executive officer was trying to see if I still had memories, and at the time I didn't. And guys were just coming up to me on base and asking me weird stuff. Maybe, and he was telling them to see if I had memory of this. And I remember this one guy came up to me and he said, hey Johnson, he told me about this machine that it can extract a consciousness from a person, but they can't be 3 or 4 years old. They can't be too young because the body is used almost like a puppet, and it's mostly stationary. So the bones would become too brittle, and it was a child's body, so it would die with no exercise.
Yeah.
So they have to, but they can't do it after puberty. So they have to wait till they're around 9 or 10 years old, or something about puberty where they can't do it anymore. And they can extract a consciousness, and then another being can project their consciousness into this empty body and use it almost like a puppet. And that's what Aquino was. And he told me, so that's what they did to Aquino. And yeah, and he said, he told me, he said he went to work in the underground base one time. He said he walked by the break room, which had a long rectangular window. So if somebody wanted to see if somebody was in the break room.
Yeah.
And he said he saw Aquino sitting at a table. He did a 12-hour shift, went back out, and he said he saw Aquino sitting at the same exact chair, just staring at the wall the same way. Like he was like this empty kind of vessel. And whatever this black reptile is can project its consciousness into Aquino's body. And that's actually what Aquino is. He's like a reptilian that lives underground. And this reptilian, I forgot what he said his actual name was, but he told me he was worshipped in ancient Egypt as a god, and he was thousands of years old.
Yeah, that the whole thing about Aquino is that one of the reasons he caught my attention early on, before any of this ever happened, was I saw his picture. And I'm like, how in the world did somebody like this ever not only get in the Army? You'd think that he'd show up to enlist and they go, "Oh, run along. We don't need you."
Especially back in those days, yeah.
But no, he's like a colonel, right? Colonel Michael.
Yeah, Colonel. Yeah, Colonel Aquino.
And everything he did in Presidio and all that stuff up and down the Army protected him. So he captured my attention immediately. I said, this weirdo in the Army, and they're protecting him. And it was right after that. Yeah. He introduced Satanism into the Army too. Him and that guy that wrote the book, Valalay.
Oh, Valalay. Yeah. Well, he did the Temple of Set. He started all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So
yeah, he was with Anton LaVey back when he was younger.
But they
started the Church of Satan. Yeah.
He is also married to Saint Clair or Sinclair. I forgot what her name. Oh, it's like one of those Diana Sinclair, something named after one of the ISIS names. I forgot what her name is. Lilith
Lilith.
Sinclair. That's what her name is. And so, not much occult there. And also, it looks like a guy. So, Aquino looks like a woman. The older she got. Well, they're half and half. They like that goat head thing.
Yo, yeah. Have you seen their kid? Their kid does videos. Oh my gosh, you can't tell what their kid is. That's for sure. Yeah.
Well, I would like to see that.
Yeah. Their kid does videos, I think, on TikTok and stuff like that. I've seen him or her. You really can't tell. It's very androgynous, whatever.
Well, it's a genetic concoction.
Probably, yeah.
Because I don't think these things have sex or anything like that. I think they just gathered things up and do some things in the lab. That's what like Max, Exactly. So God only knows what they cooked up.
And he told me that Presidio thing. I asked the reptile, the real him, if that was real, and he said, yeah, that was true.
Of course it's real.
I knew about that back then, yeah.
Who else? Okay, you have to limit it to people who are on the West Coast at the time. Well, that severely limits the world's population right there to the people who are on the West Coast at the time. Then you have to limit it to somebody who looks exactly like Michael Aquino. All right. And this was in the 60s. And I don't think too many people look like Michael Aquino back in the 60s because kids pointed him out on television and said, that's the guy.
And that throne he had in his house with the pentagram. He had this giant throne, and they went to his house and they said, yeah, and they drew pictures of his throne before they even went in, and they went to his house to investigate him. The dagger he had with the skull pummel that he got from one of the Nazis, I think he got it. They described that dagger, him showing
the one he likes to fondle. And like he holds it like this, like he's about to kiss it or something. Mm-hmm. It's Himmler's knife.
Yeah, Himmler's, that's it, yeah.
That was used in that castle, Willisburg, or whatever, however you pronounce it. I can't pronounce it ever, but this horrible knife that he loves so much. But yeah, you're right. They described everything in the house. They told where the secret room was that they have. They described the wife who was in drag, who was a guy, called Sparky or something like that. And this whole thing. So there's only one and also they had to have someone in the military who had access to all of these daycare centers.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So there's kind of narrows it.
The daycare center directly to his house, underground tunnels. Yeah.
Yeah. So that kind of narrows it down to one person and the wife. Yeah. And so they just literally let him go. But I'll probably edit this out because it's all me asking you questions that are unrelated. It's all me talking.
That's fine.
But back to the reptilians, because you not only were taken in there and introduced to this gray robot, but they also sent you down there to follow orders or to engage with this reptilian, and you didn't know what to expect. So I'll just let you go ahead. But this story's been told over and over again. So I reserve the right to stop and ask a question if it comes into my head. And then, if that's okay with you.
It's fine.
Okay, so they brought you down there and you didn't know you were good. Oh, yeah, he told you. He warned you that you were going to.
Yeah, Robert told me about the program, and he asked me if I ever heard of Project Solar Warden. And I said, no, sir. And he said, well, have you ever heard of the United States Navy Secret Space Program? And I said, no, but I think I could figure that one out. And then I agreed to join the program. I saluted him. And as he was walking away, he said, oh, yeah, one more thing, Mr. James. He said, you're going to be escorted by a reptile, and he's big. And, I really didn't know, guys were talking about things on base, but I had never seen one before, and I really didn't know what he was talking about. And, so I had another Balls Before watch on the third Friday. So this was the third week I was here, is how quickly it happened. And I sat down and I signed like a bunch of papers, and I kind of had cold feet about signing these papers. And that same first class petty officer with the blonde mustache, he said, "You're already back there, so just sign the damn papers." So he was saying that like I had already come back from the 20-year and back, and I was being age regressed. So it was
So,
like this weird kind of like time loop feeling. Yeah.
so let's back up. They, you were told you were going to go on the 20-year and back, and you signed all these papers for the 20-year and back. And it was after you came back that you met the reptile.
No. That's the thing is like I was already back there in the sense that I had already done the 20 years and I had come back. So it was like I was in a time loop. If you know what I'm saying? It was like I was already being age regressed. I had already. He said you're already back there. You already volunteered for the program.
Oh, so
like yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, it was like I had already traveled back in time, even though I haven't done this yet. My older self, I guess you would say, was being age regressed in the underground base at this moment. And he said, "You're already back there, so just sign the damn papers." So I signed them.
So, well, okay, let me try to figure this out. Because was your consciousness in the room, or was your consciousness back there? Do you think?
Well, it was me. It was me. That's another thing is when there's two of you like at the same time, you share a consciousness.
Oh, okay. All right. That answers my question. So how can you be in two places at once would be what I was trying to figure out. So you are able to share conscious. Do they artificially induce this ability to share the
No, it's like the consciousness is almost it's like God. So it can be omnipresent. It could be at more places than once, but there can only be one consciousness in existence at a time, at any time. But different beings, if there's more than one of you, now they can put a separate consciousness in a clone and things like that. But if there's more one of you just traveling in time, like time traveling, and there's more one of you at the same time in the universe, it's like you share consciousness with all these yous.
Oh, I see.
So there's two of me at the time. There's still two of me now, but it's like we're sharing a consciousness. If that makes sense.
So you were there.
Yeah, I was already being age
They were
regressed.
just making you sign the papers.
Yeah, so I hadn't even done it yet, but I'd already come back because I was going to do this anyway. So yeah, and then I signed the papers, I sat down, and I waited about, I don't know, 10 minutes, because right as I sat down, he said, "All right, send them in." He got on the phone, he said, "Send them in." And then he looked up and he said, "Go with him." And I looked up, I was kind of daydreaming. And in that same big window, there was just like this enormous, big reptile. He had huge shoulder muscles, just real big. He's probably about 9.5 feet tall. He was dark brown. He had like ridges going down his head, like almost like mohawks, kind of going down, several of them.
Well, that's what I want to know. I want to know exactly what these things look like. I realize there's different varieties, but you didn't tell that part the last time either. I missed that part with the ridges going down the head like that, because I've seen drawings of that.
Mm-hmm.
Also, you said it took your breath away, the size of this thing.
There was no way a man could be this big, even if he took steroids and he was 9.5 feet tall. His shoulder muscles were just like beach balls. They were huge. How big he was. And he had to kind of like in the room, because he was too big for the room. It made him even bigger looking because he was kind of powering down in this room. And yeah, and he had his mouth went straight across and then it went up. And you could kind of see like little teeth, like his mouth wasn't completely closed, so you could see like little teeth kind of peering through. And yeah, he had a flat face, like no nose. I think maybe just like little nostrils, little slits on either side, maybe a small one. But he was just so dark brown, he was almost like black. So in this room that was kind of, he was covering up all the lights in the room, so you really couldn't get a good look at him. And he was wearing one of those like skin tight blue suits.
This is what gets me, that they wear clothes. That blows my mind, because it's okay. It's a giant reptile and everything, but now it's got an outfit on. That's what really blows my mind. And whenever I hear any of these species described, they're always in uniform or something.
Yeah, it has to have a uniform on. Yeah.
So he had a blue outfit on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, a
Was
blue.
it high? Somebody made a comment on one of these, the family vacation video of the Grays, supposedly from Holloman Air Force Base back, I guess, in the 70s, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Remember that? That really supposedly happened. Somebody had a camera in there, supposedly, and they took pictures of these Grays. Well, they all have on high turtleneck. They're all wearing black turtlenecks. They all look like beatniks. They're wearing high black turtlenecks. They're all thin. And somebody wrote in the comments section, this video proves that black turtlenecks never go out of style. But it just cracks me up to think about these Grays and these aliens being fashion conscious.
Yeah. Well, and those uniforms serve a purpose too. Like they regulate your temperature. They devour skin cells, so they keep dust to a minimum and stuff like that. Like when you shed your skin.
Yeah.
And they can also stop like hot, like low caliber rounds and things like that. Pistol rounds.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So they're not just wearing clothes to look good.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like a military uniform for them. Yeah. That serves a purpose.
But they all have them.
Mm-hmm.
And they have little.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say they have little usually triangle emblems that mean different things.
Yeah, I think he did have like some sort of emblem. I was more or less just looking at his face. Like I was, like looking up at him. But yeah, he was in. I remember I said, I stood up and I said, Jesus Christ! Like I yelled out, Jesus Christ! And the first class petty officer, he said, the XO told you that you're going to be escorted by a reptile. And I said, yeah, I didn't think he'd be that big. I didn't think he was going to be that huge. And I didn't even know. I really didn't even know what. It really wasn't processing in my head what he was talking about. Right. And I remember I said, he's not going to eat me, is he? Because it was like the first thing I thought. This thing. He said he's much stronger than you and faster than you. If he wanted to, he would have killed you and eaten you by now. And when I said that, it sighed. Like it did like this 3-second inhale and like 3-second exhale. Like it was like a 9 to 5 to him. And he's seen this before, and it like frustrated him. And I remember I said, can he read my thoughts? Because like the other one could read my thoughts. And he said, yes, he could read your thoughts. And I remember in my head, I said, sorry about that. Like I didn't want to tick it off.
My freaking thoughts. Geez, I better get that thought out of my head.
Because he was behind glass, so he shouldn't be able to hear me, but he still heard like what I was saying.
Well, like I say, I'm just laughing because if I was you, I would have done the same exact thing. As a matter of fact, the guy would have probably been aiming the gun at me because I would have been trying to get out the door probably. I
thought about it, yeah.
I just would have made a dash for the door and like, let me out of here. But you held your own and you stayed. Well, there was some cognitive dissonance.
Well, I mean, there was a guy. There was a guard. It was a different guard this time, like a skinny kid. And I found out later he was an off-world German as well, but he was dressed up in an English military uniform. And like he had his weapon down, like at the ready. So like I kind of realized, like oh, like that weapon, I better go with him because it didn't look good. And yeah, so I followed him, and I eventually came to we went down these hallways. We're down one of those dark hallways right away. And
the red.
Well, the only red, yeah. Right away we went down one of those. So I found myself being really close to it because I couldn't really see, and I thought, well, these things must be able to see in the dark. Yeah, well, they smell almost like old feces, like really old feces is what they smell.
Oh, nice.
Like like days old. Yeah.
Ugh. Okay.
And yeah, and just
I've heard they smell bad.
Yeah, they have that. They have like that sour. Yeah, that's the best I could say. Like a sour kind of feces smell. They like stink. And eventually we got up to like an area that was like a catwalk, like 3 steps that went up, and it went into like one of those sealed airtight doors you see on ships with the wheel and everything.
Yeah.
And I walked in, and he said he walked in before me, and I was right behind him, and he said, sit in the chair. And I saw this chair, and it was it had holes in it. and it had straps, and it looked like a gas chamber chair. And when I was a kid, we had the Dare program, Nancy Reagan and stuff. It was like you're not to get kids to do drugs and stop crime and stuff like that. And they put a gas chamber chair in a trailer, and they showed it to us like in elementary school. And it really just stuck with me, and it was like a frightening experience. Like I remember how many people died on this thing. And I thought it was a gas chamber with the sealed door and the holes and the straps and everything on the chair. And I was just said, no, I'm not sitting down in that. And I went to run away, and it grabbed me and threw me in. And then it pressed like against my chest. And I remember it like rumbled almost like an alligator does, like the mating of an alligator when it can move the water. You can't hear it, but you could feel the percussion of it in your chest. And it leaned in and it said, don't make me hit you again. And I jabbed my thumb in its eye to try to get away because it was like right in my face, and it was just freaking me out even more. And it just pressed against my chest until it collapsed it, and it pressed against my heart, and I just blacked out. And then I woke up, and I had all the straps on, and it started doing something like on the wall when you first walked in. I couldn't really see, like pushing buttons or something. I don't know. And then it walked out, sealed the door, and I got almost like, it was almost like an out-of-body experience kind of thing. I was hyperventilating, and I was trying to like pass out so I wouldn't feel the pain of the gas or whatever, because I thought that's what was going to happen.
Yeah.
And it was like a weightlessness kind of feeling, and then cold, and then I don't know, you were at peace. It was almost like an out-of-body kind of experience. Like it felt like your consciousness was kind of being pulled out of you almost. And I was told on later that was like it was called a density chamber chair. And Robert told me this, and it's because most of the ETs we deal with are fifth density, so it pushes you up from third to fifth artificially, and you need to be in a sealed room for it to happen. And because the ETs we deal with, like fifth density beings, they're faster than us, they're stronger than us, and their IQ is 200 points on average higher than ours. Because once you go up to like this higher level, that's what it does. It pushes you up to like an extra 200 IQ points, and you become faster and stronger, and you become more of a collective too, in the sense that if you're in like a group of people, you kind of become more like that group.
Didn't he apologize to you? I mean, didn't this reptilian apologize, say, I'm sorry, I have to do this to you?
Yeah. When I was already strapped in the chair, yeah, that's what it said. It said, I'm sorry, I have to do this to you.
Well, that's kind of nice. It shows that a certain amount of emotion. Number one, when the sigh happened, when you said that, and it went, oh, brother, eye roll.
Yeah, it seemed kind of human. Yeah, almost. Yeah.
Yeah, that's an emotion.
Mm-hmm.
Frustration. I mean, it's better than the other thing that came out with the spider eyes. This thing has some feelings, at least, to be frustrated and then to apologize to you before it did it. I mean, look, I've heard descriptions of these things from Arizona Wilder and stuff where they're just animals. They just come at you and start tearing your flesh to pieces. So this is a very different view of these things that you're getting.
He was probably like a working caste, maybe like a military caste reptile. The bigger ones are actually more decent, I would say, than like the royal caste.
Did this one have the royal ones have tails though?
I think he had like a nub.
Nub.
He had like a tadpole nub, I think, kind of sticking through.
Oh, okay.
I remember his feet were bare. He had like bare feet. And I remember his needles, like, I grabbed his thumb to try to get him off me when I was trying to in the chair. They kind of were like, they were black, but their nails looked like ours. But then as they went out, they kind of rolled into each other and created like black, long needles that were about like that long. So the nails were like
claws.
Like claws, but at the same time, it had a regular nail like us, like on the flesh. But then as it came out, it kind of rolled into itself. Each side rolled in and created like points almost.
Well, there's a part of me that wonders if these reptiles were created themselves by some other, because everything seems like it's billions and billions and billions of years old. Mm-hmm. So that your reptile experience kind of followed you around by poking that reptile in the eye. Did he have a name, or did you ever find out if that reptile had a name?
Oh, I never knew. Yeah, I never knew.
But that particular reptile was friendly with the Nazis?
Well, I mean, just yeah, well, because I remember there was a German, like a guy who looked like he was in a Gestapo uniform. I slid off the chair. The straps were already off. And there was a guy, he had like a blonde hair, like slick back with pomade, and he had like an undercut. And he was wearing like a black leather trench coat. And he was kind of like talking to it, but he wasn't talking, like gesturing like he was talking to it. And he looked like compassionate and worried about it. And its back was towards me, the reptile. And I could see it was
Oh,
doing the same thing back to him. And yeah, he was a off-world German, and that was the first time I saw an off-world German. Yeah.
but he was feeling sorry for the reptile because you poked it.
Exactly, in the eye, yeah, yeah. And the German said I should have you killed for what you did to my man. I remember him saying
Like this guy's trying to put me in this giant lizard is trying to put me in what I think is an electric chair, and you expect me not to have a violent reaction to that. You're wishing in the wrong hand. God. Yeah, you would think that they would psychologically get you more ready for it and say, so that thing he put you in was to quickly get you into 5D, push you
Yeah,
into
it was
5D.
yeah, artificially, because we wouldn't be able you can't like work with ETs. You can't really interact with them because they're just on a higher level than us. So
Yeah,
they have to actually physically push you into a higher density.
they could have told you that.
I know why, and I said that to Robert. I said, "Why didn't you warn?" I said nobody ever did anything like that before. When I was talking to him before I left the Navy, I was like, "Nobody ever fought back or tried to get away." He said, "No." He said, "I was a CV construction battalion, so I worked in the garage. I had a marijuana paraphernalia charge when I was 19, so that's all I could do. I could only become a cook or construction in the military." Because he asked me that. He's like, "With your high IQ," he said, "Why did you do that in the military?" I said, "Because of that." And he said, "No CB, like yeah, you have to have at least 110 IQ to like even be on the mines of the moon. They want you to have at least 110 IQ." And he said none of the CBs had a high enough scores. And he said we never had like an outsider like you. All the other guys worked in the base and they had seen these things before, walking around in the underground base and stuff like that. So they were more like acclimatized and used to the situation. And I said, well, why didn't you give me any kind of warning or anything like that? Like, because I never seen anything like this before. And he said, well, you probably wouldn't have joined the program, would you? And I said, probably not. That was his.
Well, that's not a good reason.
Yeah,
Okay.
I know.
Yeah, okay, so we lied basically, or they omitted a big, huge chunk of the truth, and somehow that's your fault. Okay, I get it. I think it's all
Yeah,
going to be your fault no matter what happens, right?
exactly.
But so you went on to become a part of this kind of program, right?
Yeah, yeah. First, I was in the mines for punishment of the moon for doing that to the reptile. And then one of the Germans noticed he put like a device in front of me, and I guess it was like it showed your scores and things like that. And he noticed that I had a really high IQ. So then I wound up becoming trained for a pilot in the Dark Fleet. So I didn't go to Solar Warden like I was told, which is like the United States Navy kind of off-world space program. But I went to Dark Fleet first, and then I got put into Solar Warden after that. So
Oh,
it kind of I had to go through these steps.
can you explain? Solar Warden. I had heard that was run by the cabal for a while, and then it got overtaken. There was a revolution or something like that, or a uprising because of the whole, adrenochrome and child trafficking, mostly because of the kids. And then now the white hats are have control of it. Do you have any?
Yeah, definitely. When I was there, it was more like a joint task force with like positive ETs working with people from Earth. It was like, and they were, and but the deal was it had to be our materials. It was their technology, but our titanium to build the ships, and they could commandeer the ship anytime they wanted for any reason. That was like part of the deal. The ETs, if they needed it for an emergency.
But they were positive.
But they were positive ETs. They weren't negative.
They weren't these reptile things.
Yeah, and Robert told me what he told me was what broke the straw that broke the camel's back for the military, like the positive, the good guys in the military. And this was in 2005 before I got out. I was in the command 2 years, so I got there in 2003 and I left in 2005. He said, He said, Daryl, they start castrating children, is what he told me. And he said that was like what the transgender kind of thing,
Yeah.
chemically castrate children. He said that's when like the military really stepped in and said, no, you got to stop doing this. And he said their main goal is to eventually make pedophilia acceptable
Yeah.
to the public, because once pedophilia becomes acceptable, a civilization falls. It's just how it happens. Like a civilization will fall once that becomes acceptable. And he said that's when the military stepped in, was the transgender movement with children.
Well, they don't like women. Okay. And probably has something to do with the childbirthing process. Everything they want to do, that a female can do without even thinking about it, everything they're trying to do in their laboratories, and they're working day and night and this and that and the other. We just do it, and so they probably hate that. But also they are sexually more attracted to the same sex of these reptilian things. I don't even know if they have sex, though. I mean, maybe
I couldn't tell you that. Yeah.
sexless, but they seem to prefer little boys. I don't know whether this goes to the Freemasonry part of it, which is part of the Temple of Set and all of that. But they have this idea that a white male, about the age of 5, 4, or 3, they like to get them really, really young. They access the third eye through sodomy, and they start to split the personalities, and they just prefer men, and so that castration falls in with that they're castrating these little boys, and they become these more like hermaphrodite sex slaves for them.
Yeah. Yeah,
some of them like little girls, I guess, but most of them, I think, like little boys, castrated little boys. They probably have.
Aleister Crowley said something about that. Yeah, the purest sacrifice is like a young boy or something like that. Blonde hair and blue eye. That's like what they prefer the most, or something. The purest sacrifice.
If you think about their long-term goals too, castrating kids will keep them from having children, because you could get pregnant. You can't get pregnant if all the men are castrated.
Yeah, they want to be able to control us. Yeah, they want our population low so they can control us easier. Of course.
Well, so now we're on large spacecraft. I'm talking about you, really, but you're taking us there. You're on all kinds of spacecraft doing all kinds of things. You have limited memories still, correct?
Yeah.
But do your memories come back all the time, like every day? Like if I had a dream, I can never I know I had a dream, but it's hard for me to snatch onto pieces of it. But throughout the day, if I really start thinking about it, I could start to piece the dream together. I'm like, oh yeah, I was by the water and I was in a boat. That's right. And I start thinking about it, and I could put the dream together. Is it anything like that when you're trying to put your memories together?
It's kind of like that. And I was told by the XO, he said he tried to get me to go back in the chair when he realized that I had my memories. And it was when I was about to get out of the military for good. And he said, you're going to remember it in real time, is how he put it. In the sense that I am sharing two consciousnesses. So as the me up there is creating new memories, that's when I remember them. Because, with anything else, even on a ship, it becomes mundane and you don't create new memories every day. So it's more like once a week, or maybe even once every few months, something will really stand out in your mind and create a new memory to you. So it's more like that. It's like I don't remember every single solitary moment that I was on the ship and in different worlds and things like that. But I just different memories that stand out to me. I'll remember here.
Yeah, this would be one. The giant list.
Yeah.
And the gray. Because I've been fascinated. I know a lot of us as kids and everything have been fascinated by these little gray things. I used to have them all over my house and my room. And for a while, I produced a television show where I just explored pop culture, basically. But I had a character that I did called Alien Head, and it was a gray alien head. And I put it on a pillow and all like that, and put green lights on it. And then I would have friends of mine that were actors and ask it a question for advice. but Alien had always gave bad advice. Like, and it talked like this, darling. It talked like an androgynous being, which is kind of funny because now I'm finding out these things are androgynous beings. But my alien head would say things like, I think it's about time you consider suicide, darling. Your life is going downhill faster than you'll ever be able to save it. And so Alien Head gives bad advice, and you're not supposed to listen to Alien Head. So I've been fascinated with all these things for so long, always thought there had to be more.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
for
Well, yeah.
us to find out that all of these things that we've heard about in pop culture are actually true, that's got to be the biggest lie they've told and one of the most effective ones.
Well, that was something that Aquino told me when I was actually with him in his presence in this cavern. Is he was surprised that I had never seen reptiles before. He was almost kind of disappointed. He had a strong ego. He seemed very narcissistic, and he said, "You never heard of reptiles before, and you've never seen one of these old drones." He's like, "You never heard of these before?" And I said, "I saw one of those on the cover of a Whitley Strieber book," and I said that, and he said, "I've met Whitley Strieber." He said, "This me met Whitley Strieber." He says he knows more than he says, but he only says what I tell him. So it almost sounds like this reptile is almost like a ufology kind of like gatekeeper, is what kind of like he says what is allowed to be printed like in mass produced books and things like that, because he said he met Whitley Strieber, like the real him, like the black reptile. And he gives the go ahead of what's allowed to be printed and what's not, is how he kind of sounded. Michael Aquino, whatever that being was, that was Michael Aquino.
So Michael Aquino definitely shows his big ego.
And they're very narcissistic, just reptiles in general. And if you can actually buy time if they're upset with you or things like that by complimenting them. And they really like that. Like they're really into that. It's crazy, how much of an ego they have.
Well, a lot of times, a lot of these, I think they have a program, is it Project Mayhem or something, where they have all these super soldiers ready to go out. And when all of this stuff, it's like the Black Awakening or something like that, so that when the COVID went down and all this stuff that they had planned, then these soldiers would come up and cause even more havoc and just take over. They would keep the law and order by killing everyone. By murdering anybody that caused any trouble. They would keep the law and order, clean up messes, I guess is what. And also you can't destroy these things, supposedly. So you ended up hobnobbing with some of these elite reptiles, and I'm thinking about the time when you were asked to play the guitar. I want to say a couple things about this. I really have to hand my hat off to you to go be in this environment and to be so, I guess you don't really have any choice, do you? You just got to follow the rules. As long as you follow the rules, everything's going to be fine, and you're not going to be there forever. Mm-hmm. But you're on this ship where they have this reptile that you have to refer to as master. And there's also, I guess he's got like a court, and you have to refer to them with titles and things like that. So anyway, go ahead and tell the story about because this is.
Well, the first officer, the German that I knew, he told me that the reptiles wanted me to play for them, play guitar, because I played for the Germans they have like a bar area on the ship, and I played for them at this bar area, and so I just sat down, I had my chair, my footrest, and my guitar on my lap. And I remember I told him, like, they always want you to like cower. They always want you to be very submissive. They kind of almost want you to shake in front of them when they walk by and things like that, or you'll be punished if you don't do these things. Look at the ground. You can't look at them. And I said, I'm not doing that. I was like, I can't just cower and shake in front of them when I'm trying to play an instrument. And he said, you don't have to do any of that. He's like, you just have to play for them. That's all they want. And so I did it, and I think I played like Bach. I played some sort of Bach form, and I played, and then after this, after it was over, after I was done playing, I just with the guitar in my lap, I just bowed forward, and that was the end. They just kind of looked at each other and just stood up and walked away. But yeah, even the reptiles are fascinating. Even when I was playing for the Germans, I remember some of like the like working cast or warrior cast, the bigger reptiles, they would like stay by the door but lean against the wall. And they would watch me play, and that was like allowed.
Why do you think that is? That they're fascinated with bees because their hands they can't play, maybe, or something?
Well, there's certain things, maybe because we have such short lifespans or something, but our creativity when it comes to things like music and art, classical music and classical art, other ETs, they just don't experience that. They don't experience this kind of, you know, seize the day kind of. They don't really have that kind of motto because most ETs live thousands of years. Really, ETs aren't considered adults until around 80 years old, when they're considered like fully mentally developed. And we die around 80 years old. So most of these beings that live 3,000 years or more, they really don't have that, you know, uh, the sorrow, the tragedy, the happiness of life, like this whole poetic of, it goes away so fast. So we have to try to grab hold of it as quickly as we
Oh,
can.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, they really don't have that mentality because they live so long and they just kind
Yeah.
of take everything for granted. Well, we have more of like a kind of idea of, everything's precious, everything's beautiful. Every sunset should be something meaningful for you, every sunrise. And so, they really don't have that kind of opinion on life. So I think that's what helps us create things like classical art, classical music, and they find it fascinating. And yeah, like definitely, it's something that they don't really produce and they don't really make. They don't really have the concept of harmony and melody as we have. They do have like forms of music, I'm sure, but it's just that concept that the way we perform music, write music, they don't really have that. They don't have that concept.
Um, so as you got used to these gray things, right? You
Oh
just got
yeah.
used to them. And there's all different kinds, and you just got used to them. You pretty much began to understand what they were. They didn't freak you out. They were there to help, I guess. And some of them sound like they can be nasty, though, and some of them seem like they are developing emotions and ideas and agendas of their own.
Well, I mean, that's it. I don't know if they're all drones. I remember there were like ghostly white ones, very long, very tall, like 6.5, maybe 7 feet, white ones you would see. And they didn't wear any kind of clothing or uniform usually. They were usually just naked. And
And they have no sex organs.
none that you could see. No, no,
Yeah.
no. And they're just very ghostly and yeah, and that kind of form, that shape, you see that a lot. You don't have to see that with drones. The big head, the big eyes, that's like a common form, like skinny, lanky. So you'll see some that are big like that. You'll see some that are short like that. So that's a common kind of form that you see with different ETs.
But you've seen a lot. There's supposed to be 97 or 100 different species or something here on Earth. But you've seen way more than just the reptiles and the grays or the drones now.
Yeah, like
What
yeah.
other ones have you seen?
Well, we went on to almost like it was like a United Nations kind of like
Oh, wow.
with the Dark Fleet. It was yeah, and it was almost like it was like a space station. It was in space, and it was rectangular, and the two sides were like glass. Like the two corners were glass, the ceiling was glass, and then behind us there was just different levels of anything from trade to meetings and things like that. Whether it was warring factions that wanted to talk about peace and or anything like that. ETs love trade, so that's something you deal with a lot. And yeah, it was the first time I ever went on something like this, and there were just everything you see like on the walls of an Egyptian pyramid is the best. Basically, what I say is like I saw like feline people, canine people. I saw everything. A lot of it was small, like maybe a foot and a half tall, and the taller beings, there was like an unsaid rule where everything walked very slow. so you wouldn't hurt any of these smaller beings that were kind of weaving around and
Oh,
walking around the other taller ones. They were
these are
almost like
all
running around fast.
positives.
Not necessarily. I mean, these were like positive and negative, kind of either working together or trying to resolve some sort of peace treaty, because there are like wars and things like that between different, species of ET and things like that.
These insectoid things, I know that a lot of super soldiers have talked about these things. Well, where do they reside?
Well, they're the most common, and because they're insects, so you see them a lot. Yeah, like they multiply to like insects, and you see them a lot. And mantises, a lot of them are on Mars, and they're also almost a lot of them are mercenaries too. They'll do mercenary work. There's just so many of them, but they're very they're the most human, I would say, in the sense that they're very polite. Um, if they invite you in their house, they'll offer you to sit down, and then they'll ask you if you'd like something to eat or drink, things like that. And they have a very good sense of humor, and they're so telepathic that even if you're not a telepath, they can pick up your thoughts, and then they'll reply to you telepathically because they really don't speak. And they have, yeah, and if you crack a joke, they'll laugh, and like their mandibles will come out, like they have almost like a praying mantis kind of mandible, and they can tell it like creeps you out, so they'll cover their mouth for you, their own mouth. So
If they laugh, they go like this.
yeah, they go like that because they can tell it kind of. You see all these mandibles kind of come out as they laugh, and they sound almost like a hissing cockroach when they laugh, with a cadence of laughter.
Well,
And yeah, they have 6 legs, and if they're working on something, they'll rear up on their hind legs and they'll use their 4 like front ones to do things. But if they're like, say, if they're running after you or chasing you with a weapon, they'll keep it in their front legs and they'll run on 4 legs, and then they can run very fast on 4 legs.
and there's good and bad, I guess, in all of these species, pretty much.
Yeah, yeah. Even like the ones that you think like like Nordics and things like that. Even them, like some of them deal with like slave trade and stuff like that. There's negative factions of them. Even it's not all just good. It's like positive and negative. Like good and evil is more of like a concept of third density, and like higher density beings have more of a concept of like positive and negative. And then that's because one can't exist without the other. It's kind of like how they feel, like you need both. You need the dark and the light. You need the warmth and the cold. You need it both.
Yeah, because if everything was good, we wouldn't have anything to resist or build our what's the word I want? Moral judgment and sense of right and wrong. And I think somebody said recently that when you care more about your neighbor than you do about yourself, that is when you begin to ascend. People are ego-based, basically. So was this in 5D, this United Nations kind of thing? But I guess the negative ones can't be in 5D.
Well, that's what that chair is for, and Robert told me that. He said that artificial density chamber, he told me we can go up 1 density, because we're 3rd density, but we can go up into 4th density through things like meditation, like astral projection, and things like that, because like the 4th density is like the astral realm. But these 4th density beings that are like reptiles and stuff, they can't, through concentration and study, go up 1 higher density in the 5th. So they actually created this density chamber for themselves, so they could compete with like on the higher level. Because the 5th density is like, that's like the middle, and that's like where the meat is. That's like where the shakers are. You have higher ones than that, but it's like if you want to compete for the universe in a sense of like warfare and things like that, you need to be at like the 5th level, and that's where the 5th level is. And you have the higher density beings that they're above that. They don't even care, like 9th density beings and stuff. But if you want to try to like rule this universe, 5th density is a nice place to be. It's like the Goldilocks place to be as far as densities are, as far as being able to do it. So they actually created this density chamber so they could artificially push themselves up into 5th density so they can compete with the other 5th density beings.
It's so them, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. That's Seriously,
just
their
make
tech, yeah.
we can't do this naturally, so we'll just figure out how to make it happen artificially. That's basically what
Exactly.
they do. They
Hmm.
can't do anything naturally, it doesn't seem. Everything about them is artificial. So yeah, you're meeting or being exposed to now all different types of how long did that take you? I mean, were you just constantly being freaked out by these things as you met them? Like, I would be freaked out if I even if I'd met the giant reptile, I'd still be freaked out if I met the mantis.
Yeah, like, well, I remember when I was on like that United Nations, I was telling myself even because I thought only like the reptiles, mantises, the grays, things like that, the drones. I thought only those existed. And once I saw all these other beings, I was saying to myself, you have to remember this. You have to remember this. I remember I was like thinking in my head over and over again, like because I would always tell you like, oh, it doesn't matter what we do to you, if we hurt you or whatever, you're not going to remember this anyway. So, but that was like one moment in my life I can remember. I just repeating to myself like, this is so much stuff, and I was just looking around and everything I was seeing, it was this. I was seeing things like the Arcturian kind of beings where they had the blue sapphire skin with the big head, and their eyes are black, but their pupils are like blue swirling galaxies almost. They look like they're moving in their head, and they're like a ninth density being, like a very high density being. And yeah, it was just, and I was just, thunderstruck. I couldn't believe it. It was just so much more than I thought existed, because that's all I thought existed at the time.
Yeah, you said something in one of your when you were in one of your other videos where you said when they brought you just that little drone out. That's now I always have him up here. I guess I got to go down like this now, the little drone, and you were like freaked out that it existed even, and you thought it was a picture on the internet, that this shit was all like science fiction, and now they're dragging one out and you're looking at it and it's like weird. And so then you're like, well, you said this should be shouted from the highest mountaintop. You're like, what? This is what everybody wants to know. This should be shouted from the highest mountaintop. I remember you saying that. And yeah, now you're even thinking even more, this needs to be shouted from the highest mountaintop, because look how much how stupid or ignorant, I should say, humanity has been made to be, where we don't know about any of this stuff.
Yeah, yeah. And it's all kept underground. I mean, if people always think about space, but they never think about what's below their feet. And that's like, as far as being on Earth, I would consider that even more important. Like, let's figure out what's below us. You know what I mean? As far as living within the Earth itself. Because I never thought of that. I always thought, well, if they're up there, they're up in space. But I never really thought that there's caverns below the Earth, and that's where all these beings live. A lot of these live.
Not to mention the ocean and every part of the Earth being. And I've heard there's lots of parts of the Earth that we don't know anything about. They're keeping from us, probably for themselves. But yeah, so you're seeing everything. And I guess we better stop now, but I hope you'll come back, because we've set the groundwork now for me to write some more questions. But can I go through this just to make sure I've covered all the bases?
Of course.
So you told me about Aquino being the black snake head that David Icke drew the picture of. I need to find that, because I think that's really interesting. A lot of people know Aquino and know who he is. A lot of people look up to him, which is the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. He's a child rapist, a murderer. He's a sicko at best. So, yeah, the insectoids, I wanted to know how they smelled. Oh, here's something that I was hoping you'd talk about. Let me make sure. Yeah, common knowledge. And are the Nazis, Krug and Nachtwaffen, are they from the DNA of the SS? Now, I wanted we will go out on this, and then hopefully we can do this again.
Sure. Yeah, sure.
I'll have more questions. But remember when you told that story about how there's so much more he has to tell you guys. We would be here for like 5 or 6 hours if I asked everything I wanted to. But at one point, you talked about being able to have. There were several things that you wanted to. There was one thing you wanted to do is go and have a wife and have a child. There was one part where you met somebody, and it wasn't a human all the way; it was a hybrid. And did you have a baby with her? And then after she had the baby, she didn't want anything to do with you. And you went to the officer and you said, "What's up with this? I can't even hold my own baby that she tries to scratch my eyes out or something." And she wants you out.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that was they were like a Pleiadian kind of people, like the Nordics. Yeah, and they they after the woman has the baby, she goes through a 10-month long bonding process with her baby, where you can't, be around her. She doesn't work. She doesn't go to work. All she does is take care of the baby for 10 months. She holds it constantly. They actually have almost like a sling that's made of that same blue uniform material. That it's almost, yeah, and the baby just stays right in there, always by him. Like it goes over the shoulder and around the waist, and they just keep the baby right there. And then the material, it's like you could pull it apart and it just opens up. And then you can they'll pull the baby out of the sling. And then after they're done feeding the baby or whatever the baby needs, they'll put the baby back in and they'll just cover it back up. And it's very breathable. And they don't suffocate or anything like that. And it's almost like this, like a dark little womb for the baby to kind of stay in on this sling. And yeah, and I asked, his name was Elder. And he was like an elder one of them, and he was very tall. They get tall once they hit like 2,000 years old. Their bones begin to grow again, and they get very tall. Well, and he said, I asked him, like, why didn't you tell me about this? Like, why didn't you tell me? Because she hit me. I tried to hold my son, and she hit me and knocked me on the ground. And they're very strong. They're like genetically augmented the womb, so they're about as strong. The women are about as strong as like a strong man. And it knocked me down. And I asked him, why didn't you ever tell me this? And he said, "You're right. Somebody should have told you." And then he said, like, another woman just arrived on the ship, and she was available. And I said, like, well, I'm with her, and, like, I like her. And he said, well, that's just the way it is. Because the men, they go through, like, a rutting process, like, every 6 months for about 2 weeks, where it's, like, the male version of going in the heat. And so, and the women, they have this bonding process that lasts 10 months, and the men rut every 6 months. So it's almost like in their DNA, like, they're biologically created to kind of like it's in their DNA to be this way, like to just have more than one partner. So it's really not like a choice. And plus, like the woman to man ratio is 30-1, I would say, as far as their people. There's about 30 women to every one man. Yeah, so it's just like the way that they are as a people.
Well, I thought that was really funny. So that was Palladian.
That was the Pleiadian people. Yeah.
Well, have you ever seen that baby or again? Ever?
No.
Well, I guess that happens a lot, and we have a tendency to make it like, everything that happens here is the most important thing that's ever going to happen, in the universe forever. And so we cling to family members and this and that and the other. It all becomes a big drama and everything. And they seem to have maybe a better hold on it, I guess, if you want to look at it that way. It's more of a reproductive process, or it's a little more clinical, maybe.
Yeah, well, and I've had women write me and stuff like that, saying like, I wonder why I never let my husband touch our kid. Maybe I'm part Pleiadian, Like, there's some women, that they just want to take care of their babies, and that's it, and that's understandable. Yeah.
And you think for the child, it's like a kangaroo almost.
Yeah. The kid is with him 20, and like I remember she would take the baby out and hold the baby by the head, hold him by the head, and make eye contact. And it was like they were teaching them how to be like telepathically communicate when they were babies. They would just lock eyes and they would just be constantly communicating with their babies whenever they weren't sleeping. Stuff like teaching them how to speak, basically, at a young age.
Truman does that to me. He locks eyes and he's like, feed me. That's what I know it means. But we're a little telepathic, me and Truman. Do you have any pets?
Yeah, I have a collie named Duke.
Oh, Duke.
Yeah.
We used to have a dog named Duke. He was a chocolate lab, Duke.
Hmm.
But that's a great name for a dog, Duke. So I guess we'll wind this up. I don't really want to. I want to continue to ask questions, but I have a lot to go on now. I made some notes, and also we kind of just got through the videos that you've already made. We went over that information and got also, you gave me more information about some of this stuff, like the robot walking real fast. That adds a lot to the story, because that's going to make you more panicky. And yeah, all those little details, those are so important, like to people like us who have absolutely no information whatsoever to go on. I mean, these things could be totally fantasy. Maybe you can remember before all this stuff happened to you that you probably, I remember in one video you said, I never watched any kind of, I wasn't a science fiction fan or any of that.
Yeah, yeah. I would have never believed it. Yeah, unless I saw it. Exactly.
Well, thanks for letting me probe your experiences, and I hope I haven't upset you in any way. It doesn't seem so. You seem like a really ordinary, average guy. You would never know that you've spent time with aliens and spent time with a reptilian battling. You poked a reptilian in the eye. How many people can say that? No, nobody I know. So thank you, Daryl.
Of course.
You've got a great sense of humor, and you've been very tolerant of me. And so everybody, stay tuned for the next time I get with Daryl, because I have more questions. And thank you again, Daryl. And we are signing off.